All right, Musketeer Report podcast. Let's do it. The NCAA tournament edition. The Musketeers are coming off an 86-80 win over Texas in the first four at UD Arena. Crazy game last night, Paul. Let's start with the atmosphere. I mean, we were in the media room. I don't think you were still around for this. You had already taken off or you were doing spaces or something at this point. But Sam Green, the photographer for the Enquirer, I'd asked him and Shelby Dermer, like, hey, do you think it's fair to say that that was as loud as any home game this year? Based on what I had heard. And they were like, oh, definitely. So Sam Green went into his Apple Watch and it does the decibel measuring. He said, oh, yeah, it was over 113 or whatever. That's definitely louder than any game I've been at this year. I can tell you that for sure. Then he went through the data on his watch and said, okay, when's the last time my watch registered something that high? And it was the last time he was filming fighter jets, like them roaring over top of him. So, yeah, I would say the atmosphere was pretty good at UD Arena.
Yeah, the way that game ended, and I tweeted this clip earlier, the crescendo of Texas not fouling at the end of the game. And I know the coaching staff was asking for them to foul, so it's not like they were totally waving the white flag, but it's almost like the players did. Like the coaches were begging them to foul. And yeah, they kind of chased a couple players casually, but nobody made a concerted effort to foul. And that slow buildup of the rebound to the one outlet, to the secondary outlet, to the dunk to Fremantle, was that 4 or 5 second stretch. I'm telling you, not a single Xavier fan in that building will ever forget those 9 seconds, because and you can see, I thought everything about it. Going back and watching it later, the TV crew, the production, keeping the camera on Fremantle all the way back down the court. They didn't even show the last second and a half of the game.
Yeah.
They just showed Fremantle coming back down the court. Everything about that at the very end of the game was just this moment that I know no matter what happens here going forward over the next week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, Xavier fans will always remember that moment.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's an underrated point about the fact of the way the game finished. We didn't have to do the whole foul thing and have the anticlimactic finish. We had Xavier getting stop after stop, holding Texas without a field goal for the final, 2:53, nearly 3 minutes there down the stretch. That made the game so much more fun.
It did. And Texas has had so many troubles this year closing games that you and I looked at each other at halftime and we said, look, for the amount of struggles that Xavier has had at the end of games this year, Texas has been just as bad. There are a group of individuals that settled for a bunch of tough, contested shots in the second half. They got away from what they were doing well in the first half. And frankly, with their athleticism and their speed and their size, there's no reason they couldn't have won that game by 15. But what Sean Miller did in that second half, the way he managed the foul trouble of Ryan Conwell and Zach Fremantle and everything else, I thought the way that second half played out was just phenomenal from a coaching perspective. And then, yeah, to end the game for Fremantle, I think he finished with 15 points and, had some frustrations early scoring, got himself into foul trouble, whatever. But in the end, he was the one that had the moment that sealed the game with the dunk, that walked off the court, all smiles to everything. It was just a really, really, memorable 2-minute stretch there at the end.
Yeah, no, Paul, it really was. And the way that the game played out for Xavier's defense, I mean, it's something we've talked about all year long, the improvement of the defense, I should say all month long, really, as they've been on this stretch at the end of the season here. The improvement of the defense and the way that they did a better job of pressuring the ball and extending in a lot of cases against some of the teams in the Big East. But then in last night's game, they got to extend it after Texas hit those first 4 threes in the first half. And as you were talking about, it was like a parade to the rim, just layup after layup or drive and kick out or foul for Texas there in the first half because Xavier couldn't stay in front of them with their athleticism. But then in the second half, Sean Miller at some point was able to get through to his guys that, like, we've got to be tight and we've got to be super active in the gaps when they drive. And they did a great job of getting those deflections, getting some steals that tended to advantage in points off turnovers in the second half. I thought that was a huge factor in this game. And really, that was the biggest part of the coaching matchup that stood out to me, is the way Sean Miller was able to rectify the defensive situation on the fly there. I don't think they did a lot of adjusting in terms of like changing their schematics or anything, but just getting back to the original game plan, which was keep the defense really tight and don't let these guys get these straight line drives into the lane where we don't have multiple help defenders swiping at them.
Yeah. And I keep coming back to the talent that was on that Texas team and what that game could have turned into, and the fact that Xavier was only down 8 at the half and was able to put themselves in a position for the coaching staff to make those adjustments and to do those things in the second half, where to me, Rick, it felt like Texas just got frustrated. Like in the first half, everything was falling for them. Everything was coming easy to them. And then in the second half, it wasn't so easy. The shots weren't falling. They were settling for crazy shots from deep behind the wing three. And they got a couple of offensive rebounds and it turned into a few things. But Xavier, and I said this today on the rebound rundown, the first 4 minutes of the second half were crucial because it was either going to balloon to 15, the game was going to be over, or Xavier was going to come out of the halftime locker room with a concerted effort to get back in the game. The latter is what happened. They got it down to 4. It immediately
bounced back though, and that was impressive that they were able to overcome that bounce back.
That's exactly what I was going to say, is that it was so fast that it went from 4 back to 10. I couldn't even get a tweet out because every time that I would say, oh, now they're down 6, now they're down 8, now they're down 10, I couldn't even delete the tweet and restart again with how fast Texas went on that little 6-0 burst. And then you're thinking to yourself, okay, Xavier clearly had the confidence coming out of the half to get it down to 4. They should be able to get it back down to a point where they can win the game. My biggest question was, are they just going to run out of time?
Yeah.
Is there simply going to be enough time left on the clock for them to make the shots that they need to get the stops that they need to win the game?
Well, and it's like Trey Johnson is on the other side still, right? And a few other really talented players. Can you get the stops you need? And they held them without a field goal for nearly 3 minutes to end the game. I mean, you just can't say enough about the defensive performance, the way they got back to the original game plan after they had strayed from it and seemingly couldn't guard this Texas team at all for large stretches of the game. All of that was really impressive to me. Paul, let's turn the focus here really quickly. I'm going to talk to Jeremy Werner from our Illinois 24/7 site here in a second to get his full thoughts on Illinois and what they have. But just really quickly, I mean, talking about how this Illinois game sets up, from my perspective, it feels kind of similar to how I thought about the Texas game. Like, yes, they're dangerous. They are really talented. They have 2 first-round picks that can score the ball, that are really young, enticing prospects. But they're also a team that can get a 10-point lead, 15-point lead, and give it away in the second half and kind of lose focus and stray from their sharpness on the defensive end. Is that kind of what you're seeing as a similar game to Texas, where they're certainly dangerous? They could definitely beat Xavier by a bunch, but you feel like Xavier has a real chance?
I think Xavier has a very real chance, and I'll go back to the same line I've said a million times now this week, where Illinois has the talent of a 2 seed, but there's a reason that they're a 6 seed. And you look at what just happened in the Big Ten tournament, got blown out by Maryland. Now, Maryland has post play that Xavier doesn't have, as far as size and talent in the post, that really gave Illinois trouble in that game. But I still think coming off a loss like that in the Big Ten tournament that exposes some of the things that Illinois has struggled with this year, if you're Xavier, and it's a quick turnaround, so you don't have a ton of time to prepare your own, or to prepare against the other team. You're really focusing on what you're doing. But at the same time, there is a quiet confidence in what this Xavier team is able to do tomorrow night against Illinois, and the fact that they've already won a game in the NCAA tournament against a team that was clearly more athletic and more individually talented than them. But Xavier was a much, much better team last night against Texas than Texas was. And so if you get that again on Friday night in Milwaukee, I think Illinois, personally, Rick, is a worse matchup for Xavier than Kentucky is.
Yeah,
we'll see how this weekend plays out. But if this was switched, if this was Kentucky on Friday and then Illinois on Sunday, then you're thinking to yourself, okay, what can you get to Now you just got to get through Illinois to make the Sweet 16. Kentucky's banged up, and I don't want to go down the Kentucky rabbit hole here, but if just looking at the weekend for people that maybe haven't watched a lot of Illinois or Kentucky this year, to me, Illinois presents a much bigger problem to Xavier than Kentucky does. Kentucky certainly has its own matchup issues, but if I'm sitting here right now on Thursday just looking at both games, I'd be much more concerned about Illinois than I would be Kentucky.
Yeah, I don't know about, from my perspective, I don't know about much more, but I would somewhat agree with that. I think Illinois is a bit more dangerous for Xavier maybe than even
talent
Kentucky
level,
is.
right? And Brad Underwood's a way better coach than Rodney Terry is.
But the one thing that I would bring up about this matchup, and something I'm really interested to see, and I'm going to talk to Jeremy about this too, is when Sean Miller put this roster together, he told us a number of times, we've got to get more experienced. I want an older team. The way we did it last year with these young, inexperienced, some foreign players even, it did not work. And so we're going to get more. We're going to get older, more experienced, and tougher. That played out in the Texas game. It hasn't worked for a lot of the season. They've given away second half leads and all of that. We've talked about their lack of poise and how that was disappointing considering the way they put this team together. But it played out exactly as he planned against Texas. And now you're going up against another team that is led by, arguably you could say their three most talented players are freshmen. Maybe not their three most important players, but their three most talented players. And so when you look at that factor, how is that experience of Xavier and the way Sean Miller tried to put this team together going to play out against a team led by a bunch of young, inexperienced guys, regardless of what the situation is going into the second half?
And the fact that Xavier has already won a game. They've already got that weight off their back. You could tell, Rick, last night right away. I forget who it was, but whoever missed the first two free throws of the game went 0 for 2 from the line. It took forever for Xavier to really get the lid off the basket. I think winning a game last night and understanding what it takes to win. I know they're not going to have the same crowd behind them on Friday that they did last night at UD Arena, but still just playing in that moment, doing the media, doing all of the other little things that come with being in the tournament, and having won that, experienced it, had the high. Now you got to come down from that high. Yeah. But still, I think Trey agrees with me.
Yeah, you hear Trey in the background. He agrees, I think. No, but I think that's a good point. How do they handle that? Because big emotion swing, quick turnaround, all the travel and everything. Does that take a little something out of them? Do they come out flat? Or is that more of a situation where it's like, hey, they've got some momentum. They're really feeling themselves now. And that's all this group needed to get going, especially with the way they were playing to end the regular season. A really nice bounce back win last night after the sort of letdown at the Big East tournament at Madison Square Garden. It'll be interesting to see how the emotional side of it and the energy side of it play out, especially early in this game.
Yeah, I just listened to Sean Miller's press conference up from Milwaukee, and he was talking about that and the fact that they got in at 3 or 4, after the game. They drove straight from UD Arena to Dayton's airport, flew from Dayton up to Milwaukee after the game. So they got in however late that was, but the guys were able to sleep in this morning, catch up on their rest. They also don't play until almost 10 o'clock Eastern time tomorrow night, almost 9 o'clock Central time. So they'll have plenty of time during the day on Friday to catch up on that rest. I don't think rest is going to be an issue for this team because, look, there's a group of guys that have waited 4, 5, 6 years to play in this moment. Rest and recovery is not going to be an issue for this group. It's going to be, can they go out on the court and overcome a very talented Illinois team?
Yeah, you started this by talking about a guy that you're very happy for last night, Zach Freemantle. Fun to see him and it finish off the way it did for him. One other guy that we're going to finish this up by talking about him is Marcus Foster. What a night. What a performance by Marcus Foster. 8 of 9 from the field. He hits the 4 3-pointers. And the coolest thing about it, I feel like, is it was one of those moments where not just a guy who is seeing his last games play out, not wanting his story to end, but also an experienced guy hearing about this hot freshman prospect that is coming in to dominate him and him being like, well, he also has to guard me on the other end. Let's see how that plays out. And Xavier really kind of exploited Trey Johnson in this game on the defensive end. And I mean, Marcus Foster being able to nearly match Trey Johnson's output. And actually, from an efficiency standpoint, he had an even better game than Trey Johnson did. Man, that was really something special to watch.
And you think back, Rick, to the last couple of weeks of what Xavier's done against the opposition's best players. You think about Ryan Kalkbrenner in that game at the Cintas Center. Cam Jones didn't kill Xavier last week. He had a good game, but it wasn't that trademark, 30 or 40 point game that maybe Cam Jones could give you on that biggest stage at MSG. I think the game plan defensively for Xavier against the opposing team's best player has been really good in the last 3 or 4 weeks.
No, I would agree with that. All right, Paul, I appreciate you joining me. I know you're super busy and everyone's running around right now, but good to catch up and get this out there for everyone. We didn't want to leave them hanging after a huge win like that. I'm going to talk to Jeremy now and get the Illinois perspective, but thank you.
Absolutely, Rick.
All right, Jeremy Werner is with me from our Illinois site at 24/7 to talk about this matchup here in the first round, the round of 64 after Xavier knocked off Texas. Jeremy, I think, there's so much content now, especially from the Xavier side of things. We have all these different video interviews and podcast interviews and everything. So I don't want to just rehash all the same questions and all the same things that we're going to talk about. So I thought maybe the way we could do this is you give me, based on your knowledge of Illinois and what you know about Xavier, your thoughts on how this matchup sets up from an Illinois perspective. And then I'll kind of pick apart that, go at it a little bit, and then we'll kind of flip it around and do vice versa. All right?
I like this idea. So I was sitting there watching Xavier, Texas at a Milwaukee bar here because I got up here last night. And I'm sitting there kind of going back and forth this entire time of, Illinois draws this 6 seed, which is good. They're close to home. All of that's really good because we thought they could be a 7 seed potentially after getting trounced by Maryland in the Big Ten tournament. But I did think they were playing, 1, a hot team in Xavier, and then 2, a very talented team in Texas. And I was going back and forth about what team Illinois would rather play. And it was just kind of like a pick your poison for me because Xavier plays a style, like they like to get up and down, more of an offensive based skill team that's got some question marks defensively, especially at the rim, stopping them. That style Illinois has succeeded against this year. I think of a team like Iowa. Xavier's had more success, but teams that are a little bit more skill based, Illinois has played well against. But Texas is not as well coached, right? Like they're the bigger physical team. Illinois really struggled with bigger physical and, just to be honest with you, more talented teams. Like they lost to Rutgers, who's not a very good team, but has 2 top 5 picks because they couldn't stop those guys. So Illinois has struggled with those level of teams, but like Illinois is more of a skill-based team, but they're longer, they're bigger. So I thought Xavier stylistically was better, but then I watched them last night, and it's everything I get concerned about with Xavier, where it's like they're old. They're the second oldest team in the country, while Illinois is the 301st team. And you saw like that poise late in games. You saw them making good decisions, running their stuff, old guys stepping up to the moment while Texas was just kind of fading, making bad decisions in their offense and not really defending at the end of the game. And that's what gets you worried about a team like Xavier if you're Illinois. So I think it's a fascinating matchup because Xavier's obviously feeling good. They're old. And Illinois is young, and a lot of these guys have never been here before. Rick, they have 138 minutes of NCAA tournament experience on this team, and 85 are from Kylan Boswell, who played at Arizona the last couple of years. So it's just a team that hasn't been on this stage, so you don't know what kind of team is going to show up because Illinois could blow Xavier out or they could get blown out by Xavier. That's just how this team's kind of been this year. It's been really, really up and down. So even though stylistically I kind of like the matchup, I don't like the disadvantage of experience for Illinois.
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought that up. I wanted to ask you about that. How has that manifested itself in terms of that inexperience? What type of mishaps are you seeing or lapses, or are there issues that come from playing such a young lineup for this Illinois team?
Well, just for Xavier fans that don't know, Illinois went to the Elite Eight last year. Terrence Shannon Jr. was having, if it weren't for Zach Edey, the best NCAA tournament of any single individual last year. He was averaging like 30 points a game during a 6-game postseason stretch. First-round draft pick. Marcus Ask was an all-Big Ten first-team player. They had a bunch of 23 and 24-year-olds on that team, but they had to replace 9 of their top 10 players this offseason. So they went and got a lot of talent. Will Riley's projected one and done. Obviously, Casper Sakashonis, I'm sure Xavier fans know about, the projected lottery pick. And Tomislav Ivicic they get from overseas, and he's one of the best centers, stretch centers in the country. And then they go get Kylan Boswell, Trey White, two guys who had a lot of experience, Ben Humrickhouse. But it took a lot of time for that team to gel a little bit, but they started off 12-3 and beat some good teams, lost to Tennessee on a buzzer beater. And everyone's starting to think this team maybe has Final Four potential. Then some injuries happen, some illnesses happen, and this team just didn't deal with adversity well. Like, those things really affected them, and they lost some games that they wouldn't have if they were healthy, but they also just got trounced in some games. So it shows up in inconsistency. It's a team that's still learning each other, still figuring out their roles as the season went along. But you just see late in games, this team can really let up, kind of like Texas did the other night, that they don't know that you have to play a full 40 minutes to beat a team. Even if you're up 15 with 6 minutes left, you can't just roll to a victory and just, these other teams know you still got time on the clock. And Xavier showed that last night. And then you just decision-making. Kasper Siakishonis is a lottery pick, but he has some decision-making that really hurts Illinois at times. He has turnovers that lead to easy breakouts and easy points for the other team. Will Riley sometimes earlier in the year would rush some shots and just try and go one-on-one with somebody like you saw with Texas the other day. But he's gotten a lot better at that. But it's still a team that it's just they haven't been in these situations together. I always think a team is better in the second year of going through these things. And we've seen that in my time at Illinois. Like Ayo Dosunmu and Kofi Coburn were two All-Americans for Illinois. Their first year in the NCAA tournament, they had never been there because of COVID the year before. And Loyola had been there, been to a Final Four, and it just showed up in that moment. They just had never experienced that before. So that's what I get concerned about with this team. They're going through all these things for the first time together, and playing on this stage is a little bit different. They were playing good basketball. Once they got healthy, they played 4 of their best games in a row, but then they just got trounced by a Maryland team that has had their number for years here. But it's just those moments where you need a leader to step up. You need your best player like Kasper Siakishonis to make a good decision. Sometimes that hasn't happened for them.
So I asked you to sort of talk about the matchup from the Illinois perspective. When you led off, I agreed with pretty much everything you said, even about Xavier there. I think you got it right. We were talking, we did something for your site, and we were talking about how I feel like both teams are feeling similar about this matchup. Like, Illinois is looking at it and saying, okay, that's a good matchup for us. Xavier's going to play a style we like. From Xavier's perspective, I think the things that give Xavier the most problems specifically are defenses that are long and athletic and that stick to shooters. They force you to play one-on-one. They don't let you get off three-point shots. They really do a good job of sticking to three-point shooters and not letting Xavier rotate the ball and create those clean kick-out looks or swinging the ball around the perimeter. How it looks like from a statistical profile perspective, Illinois has done a good job of taking away the three-point shot this year. How has that been playing out, especially down the stretch here? How would you rate your defense? What style of defense is it? And do you see that as being what I laid out for Xavier being an issue? Do you think Illinois can present that type of problem for them?
Brad Underwood's defensive philosophy is force tough twos. That is what they want to do. So they play drop coverage most of the time. That has changed here a little bit. I'll get into that, but they play drop coverage with Tomislav Ivicic and Maurice Johnson most of the time. So they want to protect the rim that way. And then they chase shooters, as you said. Now, Kylan Boswell is one of the best defenders, I think, on-ball defenders in the country. He does a pretty good job of it. Kasper Siakishonis is actually a way better defender than I thought he would be. We're coming off a game where Rodney Rice went off for them for 7 threes against Maryland. So they can let some guys go. That is for sure. But they'll dork the worst shooter. That's what Brad Underwood calls it. Like, they'll let the worst shooter on the floor if they have a 20% guy or a guy who doesn't shoot. They won't guard him.
So Dalen Swain. I mean, that's what everyone's pretty much been doing to Dalen Swain, is not guarding him from the perimeter. Yeah.
So I'd imagine they do that. Now, Illinois fans will tell you a lot of times that guy hits 2 or 3 threes against them because they leave them so open and don't contest whatsoever. But they do want to force you into the lane, some contested twos. They'll live with that all day, even if it's a good contested two guy. But they have started to change that a little bit. They've started to stab. They've started to, I don't want to call it hedge, but they've started to do that a little bit more so that Kylan Boswell or Will Riley or Kasper Siakishonis can get back in front of a guy to stop them from getting the lane, because they can allow some dribble penetration with their defense. But Tomislav Ivicic has been doing a pretty good job of that. But it's not a great defense. Illinois is pretty good at the rim. But they can let some shooters go, man. So I think the biggest part for them is communication defensively, but they just don't have a lot of individually great defenders. They have length. You mentioned that. They do have length. So contesting they're pretty good at. They don't have a lot of athleticism. Will Riley's a one-and-done draft pick. He's not a one-and-done because of his athleticism. It's more his skill. It's his size as a scorer. Kasper Sakashonis isn't a great athlete. So you don't have a lot of explosive guys. And Tomislav Visic, even though he's a decent rim protector, he's not overly strong. So you can bully him a little bit. Even a guy like Freeman, I think, will have some finishes around the rim against him. So the one guy that can be really imposing is Merez Johnson Jr., who had a wrist fracture, missed a couple weeks, but he's back. He's a big physical, 6'9", 255-pound, just absolute awesome on the glass and can block a lot of shots. So he's their one guy who can do those things.
We talked a lot about Kasper Sakashonis, and obviously Will Riley. I feel like Will Riley down the stretch has been maybe their best player. Kasper is a big factor too, but Will has been really impressive. Are there any other names that have been popping or that have something interesting that you could tell us about here, especially as it's been coming down the stretch of the season?
Yeah, Yakashonis has really struggled here recently, but Will Riley's kind of lifted himself up. Really smart for a 19-year-old, has a really good basketball IQ, just kind of plays like the old man at the Y. Has these spin moves, finds a way to get open and finishes really well. And he doesn't turn it over a lot for a freshman, while Kasparis will turn it over. But if Kasparis gets confident and hot, he carried them for the first 3 months offensively. But even despite those guys being the one and done, the most important player on this team is probably Tomislav Visic. 7'1", 235, 240 pounds, but he lets you play the 5-out offense that you got to bring Fremantle out. He's got to go guard Tomislav Visic. Otherwise, he's capable of hitting 3 to 5 threes in a game. And when that happens, Illinois always wins. So you have to go guard him there. But then the difficult part is he's a really good passer as well. So he can kind of pick you apart in that high post or from the top of the key and have Illinois back cut. And Trey White, who's 6'7", 220 pounds and can finish at the rim, probably one of their best athletes. He's a really good back cutter. Will Riley's been great at back cuts. And then Kylan Boswell is another guy to watch. He's their most experienced guy. He's their unquestioned leader. He's their best defender. But when he's confident and aggressive and attacking the basket, Illinois, he kind of sets the tone for them. He's kind of the barometer for what I think is Illinois' toughness at the beginning of games. So if Kylan Boswell gets going early, this team can be pretty good. Because one thing Illinois does, it is settled for threes way too much. Like they take as many threes as anybody in the country, even though they're one of the worst three-point shooting teams in the country. They have capable shooters, but they settle for these contested shots without, running offense. When they attack the basket and then kick out for three, then they're good. And they can when they make 11 threes, they haven't lost a game. I think they're 12-0 in games that they make 11 threes. So if they're kicking out, if they're driving aggressive to the rim, which I would be against Xavier, and then get their shots from three from that's when Illinois is good. But sometimes they just lack that aggression, and they let other teams kind of punk them a little bit. So I feel like in the first 5-10 minutes, you usually know whether Illinois has got that aggression and that confidence that they need to win.
From what I've seen and what I'm hearing you say here, just to sum it up a little bit, I mean, pretty fast-paced, going to come up the floor, play off a lot of ball screens with their guards, look to get downhill with a lot of space because they play that 5-out style, kick to shooters, and you got to try to match up with their individuals from there with Riley and Yakashonis, right?
Yeah, it's all NBA based. They watch a lot of Boston Celtics, and that's kind of what they've wanted it to be. Now they give up some on the defensive end because of it, right? So they give up some of that because they prioritize skill. But when Illinois is humming, they can blitz people. And that's what's scary about them is they beat an Oregon team who's a 5 seed by 32 at Oregon. They beat a Michigan team who just won the Big Ten tournament and is a 5 seed by 20 at their place. They really competed well against Tennessee. Weren't able to win that one, but when they are rolling, they can blitz people, but it's just inconsistent. They can as easily go 5 for 26 in a game from three. And because they're not aggressive towards the basket, they don't really have a way to keep up with the team. So it's just been a roller coaster ride of a season. And that's why I just have no idea, Rick, what to expect out of this team once it gets into the NCAA tournament, because they are the more talented team tomorrow. But Xavier's been consistent here recently, and Illinois is, I think, 9-9 in their last 18 games. Now it's in the Big Ten; it's obviously good competition, but they just haven't been able to string a lot of wins together, stack them together.
All right, Jeremy. Well, you've kind of, I'm not going to ask you to like tell me what you think of the game or a final prediction here because you've told us multiple times.
I have no idea.
Anything could happen. Yeah, we just don't know which Illinois team is going to show up. Is there anything else that I didn't ask you about or that you just find interesting about this matchup that you think would be worthwhile to share to Xavier fans?
Yeah, I want to bring up Morez Johnson Jr. He's a big X factor. The big guys for Illinois, I think, are a huge X factor because at times they can be really good together on the court, too. We didn't see Morez Johnson and Tomislav Visic play a lot together at the Big Ten tournament after Morez came back from a wrist injury. But that's something they were doing before they kind of suffered all these injuries and illnesses. Those two were playing more together, and Illinois can be a very good rebounding team when you got a 7'1" skilled guy who can get a bunch of defensive rebounds. And then Morez Johnson Jr. is one of the highest offensive rebound rates in the country. So the one thing Brad Underwood says is he tells his team to keep shooting because then we're going to go get them. So I'm really interested in this part of the game where, Illinois sends 4 to the offensive glass. Xavier likes to push it in transition. Illinois' transition defense is not very good, but they get a lot of offensive rebounds back and score a lot of points off that. So if Illinois is able to get offensive rebounds, it could go very well for them. If Xavier gets the defensive rebounds and pushes it in transition, Illinois is really bad at transition defense. So that rebound battle, I think, is going to tell a lot. And I think Morez Johnson Jr., after getting his win back a little bit last week, after sitting for about 3 or 4 weeks, I think he's going to be a huge X factor in that battle.
Well, those are great insights. I appreciate you sharing that. And one of the great things about the 24/7 network is you do get access to these other team sites. So if you are a Xavier fan, one of the consistent themes across 24/7 and other basketball websites I visit, people always say, Jeremy and your team there do the best job in the country at running a team site. So if you want to go and get some other really great coverage from the Illini perspective, there's no better place than our 24/7 site that Jeremy runs. So thank you for joining us today. I really appreciate it, man.
Thanks for having me, Rick.
All right, just to wrap this one up, I know you guys have probably seen the reports out there after Xavier beat Texas last night. It was reported that Rodney Terry is going to be fired from Texas, and now our 24/7 site, our Texas 24/7 site, has put up their hot board for who are the candidates to get the head coaching job at Texas next. And Sean Miller is one of the top names on their list. I don't think that comes as a surprise. We've been talking about it at Musketeer Report that his name would be mentioned with this job. I don't think it's something to get too worked up about just yet, obviously, but it's definitely something that our Texas reporters believe is there's serious interest on Texas's part. So it's definitely going to be something to monitor in the coming days. We'll talk much more about that on the premium message board at musketeerreport.com over the next few days and going forward as long as that storyline lasts. So if you're not signed up for musketeerreport.com right now, it's the perfect time to do so. Not only is it fun to talk about Xavier being in the tournament and playing good basketball, but you also have the transfer portal starting on Monday, and that's going to be crazy this year. There's going to be a lot going on with that, and we'll have it all covered at Musketeer Report. That was an interesting time last year on the website for certain. I think all of our subscribers would tell you that. And then also you now have this Sean Miller and Texas storyline potentially to keep an eye on. So we'll have all that covered. It is a 50% off sale going on right now at musketeerreport.com. So if you're not already a subscriber, sign up. Best time to do it, and you get a great deal as well. So appreciate all you guys listening to this, and we will talk more about all of it on the message board at Musketeer Report.